We're going to delve into the marine environment. We're going to move to the underwater world, and we're going to move to a project called Caibleadh, which means otherworldly voices of the sea. So we'll go into that a little bit more in detail, but I'd like to welcome on screen artist Ling Heaney. So she's a visual artist from Bray in County Wicklow, and she has graduated from NCAD in 2015 with a BA in Fine Art and Visual Culture. She uses CGI, digital animation, and Blender to create her pieces, so very much into the open source software. We also have Dr. Colin, Owen Daly, and Fergus McAuliffe from iCRAG. We have another person on the iCRAG team. It was a big team this year, so we had Andrew Trafford as well, who unfortunately can't be here tonight. But everything from a marine engineer, marine geologist, marine acoustician, and also, I guess, marine public engagement. So lots going on there. Caibleadh was fantastic. I know, Ling, you navigated us through that world so seamlessly in the beginning, so thank you for that. I'm going to come to you first, because let's talk about how dreamy and magical and otherworldly that was. So when we're looking at Caibleadh, it kind of crosses over between the realms of realism and fantasy. And when we're going through the water, there's kind of little surprises tucked in behind different sections. I know it's 360, so we may not have explored it all in the opening. So you're very attuned to how things move in nature. That's very obvious in the film, from the reflections, the movement of the boat. We see the fish coming through in the end. So can you tell us how you decided on the aesthetic for this work? And how you first came about to love this type of animation, because we do see that from you in other places.
Yeah, so I definitely, just off the bat, would totally recommend you to rewatch it on your phone as well, because you can get like a proper 360 effect. But yeah, iCRAG sent me so many photos and videos, and there was so much that I got to just go through that they had, and like they're like underwater scans that I was able to bring into Blender. Like there's so much research that I just had at my fingertips. So just from that really helped me to kind of, I guess, pick what direction I wanted to go in. But I was really inspired at the very start from the colors of the, I have it written down here phonetically because I don't know how to pronounce it, bathymetry.
Perfect.
Yeah, the rainbow colors from the bathymetry files. I was so interested because that's how kind of the machine sees nature. So I wanted to kind of extract that out and kind of go try and meet it somewhere in between. Yeah, and that's kind of where I started from. The color was really important to kind of start from.
You executed it perfectly. And I guess when we're jumping into that world, it is the sea. We're seeing real things in there, but it's also full of imagination. And I'm just wondering where your love of that kind of color comes from. Where did you kind of go towards kind of the pastels in that one?
I guess the software that I use, it's just perfect for creating that. It kind of comes from the software. Like I don't know how I would recreate it in real life. And because it's 3D animation, you can literally do whatever you want. So if ever I was kind of veering towards something that was a bit too realistic, I'd be like, no.
What is that?
Make it pink, make it orange.
That is wonderful. I actually just think of you at home in this like beautiful, dreamy world. You've done well. To bring it over to iCRAG then, you said you got lots of imagery and you got lots of information on that end. So a lot of your research in iCRAG is looking at exploring the depths of the sea, looking at the seabed, seeing what's around. And I just wanted to check in with you. What is the importance of this kind of research in the Irish context, the marine research side? And also looking how it links in with Ling's work. What are we actually seeing in that animation that came from the research itself?
Sure. So I suppose to understand the importance of our research and seabed mapping for Ireland, it's really important to understand how important the Irish offshore is. I mean, like really, it's about 10 times the size of our landmass, or 880,000 square kilometres, which may be an abstract number, but it's about 123 million football pitches in size. So it's really a vast area which has a wealth of biodiversity and resources. So to really kind of understand these resources, this biodiversity, seabed mapping really kind of underpins a lot of this. So when you consider the various habitats that are out there, so off the west coast of Ireland, we have these magnificent cold water corals. So these are very similar to the kind of corals you see in the tropics, but they just happen to be in much deeper water conditions. And we got these magnificent canyons as well. So you would have seen both of them in the video actually. And these canyons offer up these really strong biodiversity hotspots where you get like a wealth of various different biodiversity. And then these corals and habitats, they obviously respond in different ways to climate change. So by studying the seabed, we can actually understand more about environmental change related to climate change and how climate and environment have evolved over time. So the seabed is a sort of a natural record for this. And then I suppose finally, in terms of my own research, what I do, there's a huge amount of energy potential out there in terms of offshore wind and wave energy. So a lot of my research uses seabed mapping to look at suitable sites to develop offshore wind turbines effectively. So in terms of the actual physical mapping itself, it's very difficult. You need a boat, and you saw in Lynn's video that color plays a very strong component in terms of visualizing the seabed, but we actually use sound is the kind of main component that we use. So we use a sort of form of echolocation almost to map the seabed, and that's that we turn that sound then into color, which is related to depth.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic to see even how the physics of that works. You're using one element to create a visual, and it's just fantastic to see. But in terms of where we are in Ireland in Ling's piece, I mean, there's definitely seabed mapping there that is true to form, right?
Oh, absolutely. So Lynn did a great job of kind of visualizing the abstract, but also within there's actual pieces of data from the seabed. So both bits of the seabed off the west coast of Ireland and on the east coast of Ireland, which we've mapped at iCRAG. But also, I suppose, just for the viewers at home, it's important to understand that Ireland has one of the most extensive seabed mapping programs in the world, run by Infomar, which is a joint project between the Geological Survey here in Ireland as well as the Marine Institute. And all of that magnificent seabed data is available for free for anybody to look at. So I'd encourage you to go and look at that, and you get a real sense of the diversity of seabed that's out there.
Absolutely. I think this piece in itself, as well as the artwork, it really makes you appreciate what we have in Ireland. And I think you probably already know that from your research, but actually there's a lot of people that don't have access to seeing the sea or seeing underwater. And Ling, you bring that by actually bringing us on a journey. I'm even thinking if you were sitting in a hospital bed, you can see what someone out at sea is looking at with an instrument way offshore of Ireland. That's incredible. And that's something that really shows the power of collaboration in this sense. So the film has like a range of senses in it. I think we're almost bar touching and smelling what's around us. Everything else is covered. So I wanted to look a little at the soundscapes. There's incredible soundscapes in there, but it is a huge blend of different things going on. And speaking to Ling and the sound designer you work with, Ling, Tiva, there is just a phenomenal amount of work there. So between everyone, and Fergus as well, I just wanted to go through what sounds do we hear when we're exploring that underwater piece. So I might jump to you first, Ling.
Yes, so the violin was written specifically for this piece. Tiva is a violinist, so I just kind of gave her free rein on that. I was like, make it sound a bit Irish, and I think she did a great job. And yeah, just mixing in, she does Foley art as well, so she really knows how to do sound effects as well. And she's able to mix in the hydrophone recordings from the guys as well.
Absolutely. There's just a fantastic depth to the soundscape. So looking at the acoustics end on the iCRAG side, what are we hearing?
Yes. So I suppose, as Lynn said, we have equipment that allows us. They're called passive acoustic monitors, and basically they're little listening robots, I suppose, that you put out underwater, and they just record sound continuously. So a lot of the sounds that you're hearing within the piece are actually the sounds of the sea. So in the marine environment, animals, there's animals communicating, obviously, so you can get a sense of that, but also the movement of the sea in terms of waves and so forth, that generates noise naturally. But there's also what we call anthropogenic noise, or human-made noise in there, which isn't always as advantageous. So we get, even from, like, say, our own survey vessels, or even general offshore vessels that are traveling around, they're generating noise. Trawlers, they're generating noise. Our survey equipment generates a certain degree of noise as well. So I suppose what's really important is understanding this and generating a baseline of this. So this is a very important aspect for marine spatial planning going forward, is to understand all of this noise, because obviously from a marine mammal perspective, inputting human-made noise into the marine environment isn't good for them, because they use sound to communicate over long distance, but also to hunt for their food. So if you're interrupting that sound, that natural sound, then it could have an impact on mammals. And at iCRAG, Owen Daly is our researcher who's doing a lot of work in that, kind of recording soundscapes and seeing how that affects animals.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And actually, when we think of that environment, and especially with sound, lots of these animals are communicating in infrasound and ultrasound, which we can't hear. And actually, one thing I would love to know is how your piece, Ling, sounds to a marine mammal as opposed to what we hear when we look at it. There's definitely other sounds in there, which I'm sure you can see on programming, but we can't hear. So Fergus, just to jump over to you then, there is a big, strong element of culture in this piece as well, and even Irish heritage. So just coming to the name Caibleadh, where did that come from?
So Caibleadh is, I guess, where the whole idea came from originally. So it's a word that means effectively otherworldly voices heard on the sea in the distance at night. So it's one of those beautiful Irish words that it's one word in Irish and it's a whole sentence in English. And it comes from the Mullet Peninsula in Mayo, and where Mark and I heard about it first was, there is a poet and broadcaster called Manchán Magan that people may have heard about, and he started this initiative called the Sea Tamagotchi. And what it was designed to do was to effectively record old and rarely used Irish words, and then to publicize them and to give them to people to mind throughout their life. So this particular word, Caibleadh, he actually gifted to Prince Will and Princess Kate when they came to visit Ireland. He gifted this word to them to take forth throughout the rest of their lives and to safeguard. And when we looked into that word, we thought it was just, it's such a beautiful world in and of itself. And when we think about Ireland's marine territory, there's so much out there that we know about, and there's so much out there that we don't know about at the same time as well. And we really liked that idea of these otherworldly spirit voices out there in the distance. You can kind of hear them, can you see them? And it was then quite a nice jump to take that word then and be like, okay, well, when we think of the sea, what are we thinking about? What is out there? And then we merge into mythology. So you may have heard of this ancient tribe called the Fomorians. So the Fomorians they're effectively demon spirits, and they live out there in the sea. And kind of in Irish mythology, they would often come up onto land and they would fight the Tuatha Dé Danann, which are kind of the predecessors to ourselves. And according to lore, after one particular huge fight, the Fomorians were driven off the land and back into the sea, where they now reside. And to bring this full circle, one of the researchers in iCRAG has been involved in studying hydrothermal vents. So these are effectively chimneys at the bottom of the sea, out of which come high temperature water and minerals. And these can be maybe 10 or 20 meters in height, and way out off the Irish coast, even outside of Ireland's marine territory, just near the Azores, there is one of these hydrothermal vents or chimneys called, and it's named after one of these Fomorians called Balor. And he was the king of the Fomorians. He only had one eye, but it was a poisonous eye. So whoever he looked at would instantly be killed. So way out in the sea, there is an element of Irish mythology that is preserved out there. And then how Ling then kind of brought that into the video, where we see these unusual kind of hands and arms, and they're kind of grasping towards you, and it's a little bit unnerving. We found that to be a highly effective representation of when science meets mythology.
Absolutely. That was a great encapsulated lesson in Irish folklore. I loved it. So from, I guess, all of that, we're coming in on time now. There's shivers running up people's spines when they hear this. If you're completely immersed, I would totally say get a pair of headphones, put it on and have it on your phone. It's incredible, even if just for meditation for a few minutes. But just to finish up for today, so thanks a million to all of you for your incredible work and the incredible work on the resources as well. There's a lot of work going on in there. Quick fire between all of you. What do you see for the future of marine research and art working together? So I might come to you first, Mark.
Oh, this has been just a marvelous experience, to be quite honest. And I think a lot of the researchers said it, just looking at our data in a new way and looking at our research in a different way, and then how we use that to interact with the public. There's huge possibility there, because I think as an island nation, we may not have always engaged with our sea in ways that we could have done, but there's always this. What always brings the sea to people is art. It's music, it's imagery. So definitely bringing the science of the sea to people, art is the key, I would say.
Perfect. And then quickly to you, Ling, quickly to Fergus, and we'll wrap up there.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much resources that iCRAG have, and like I could have taken it in so many different directions. Like there's at least 10 other projects in there. So yeah, I just think more of this, more of the same.
More of the same.
Yeah.
I'll take more of that. I'll be there watching when the next thing happens. And finally, Fergus, just for the last punchy word on where we see the future of this.
Yeah, so we've done lots of collaboration with the arts in iCRAG over the years, be it poetry, we've done it through baking, through sculpture, through a choral performance. I have a dream to someday hold a science rave in a cave. Great. So I'll leave it at that. A rave in a cave is where I see this ending up.
Rave in a cave. We'll end on that note. Ling, I hope you're ready for the rave in a cave. Thanks a million. You've been a fantastic team.